Check 1, 2. I can't hear you, but that's my problem, not yours right now. Now I hear you.
Okay, I'm also logging in on my phone because I'm gonna open browser, log in OneDrive app. Who cares about the login? Just give me a browser.
Awesome.
Trying to log in with my phone too.
Cheryl's here.
Hello.
Rustin.
Oh, okay, so I'm making Rustin a co-host.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm gonna do things a little different. I'm gonna try and call in also from my phone. So I'm gonna set up my phone on this little web camera thing so I can still navigate here and share screen there. EWY5E. And why would we be doing this? Because it's crazy to do this right before the meeting.
Right? You must work well under pressure.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure you do.
I love enjoying with video. Okay, cool. We're in. Okay. So hopefully that's there. Let's get this thing straightened out. All right, and then that means that I can technically detach this. I should connect with my audio on my phone. I'm gonna do that, but then I'm gonna mute. Is that good? Can you hear me still?
Yep.
I just kill the speaker. Sorry. Lord Jesus.
We hear a lot of you.
I think we're good now, right? Can you hear me okay?
Still have that echo.
Okay, let me do this. Let me mute this one.
Is your computer volume muted?
Yeah, I'm gonna turn that down right now.
What you need to do is click on the video and, the mute button, but leave the computer audio. You can leave one of the audios. That's usually what I do.
You're muted on both right now.
Check, can you hear me okay?
Still heard an echo there.
Is that us?
I don't know. I'll mute me.
Is there still feedback?
Sorry, you're good. You were good that time.
Check one, check.
Oh, almost. It muted right away, but yeah.
Is that better?
Perfect.
Okay, cool. It was on speaker on this one.
Oh,
phone,
okay.
So it
Yeah.
was just reverbing. Okay,
Right,
cool.
right.
So I'll talk on this one for the phone. Just kidding. And then I think this is the screen that I'm going to share, that one. So let me try and
Okay.
go here. We're still in the waiting room, or everyone's here?
No,
Hallelujah.
people are coming in. I know. Yeah, we don't have waiting rooms. Hi, everybody. Hi, Iris. Beth, Joyce, Eileen. And Lisa might not be on right away, so I'm going to introduce you, Russ.
Okay, perfect. So you can still see my screen, right? And I sound okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. That means I can now detach this one. Oh, it's about to get real. Perfect. And then I can just have, even though the camera's up there, I can probably deaden that camera and still share my screen, right?
Right.
Okay, perfect. Cool. So then if I want to go here, you guys can still see me drawing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Ooh, fancy dancy.
Yeah, this is technology, man. Cheryl, can you turn me down a little bit? Thanks, sorry.
Okay. This is the screen that I'm looking at. Here, okay, I got it now. I'm going to orientate itself to everything. Still crooked. No, we'll figure it out.
Looks good. Yeah, your camera looks great. We're rocking
Okay, let me adjust volume here.
it. All right. People are logging on. Autumn's on. Hi, Autumn. How's it going?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Doing good. Glad to see you on here.
Thanks. Good to see you too.
There's Audrey. How are you doing, Audrey?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Good.
Please
Long time no see.
I know. Long time no see nobody.
I know.
I got two. The reason I'm looking up and down is I got two computers going. I'm drawing on, well, that's the camera, and then I'm drawing on that one down there. So, all right. Let's see if I can just set that. Nope, that's not work. Okay.
Get started here shortly. Everybody, just so heads up, the student manual is in the chat. So if you have not downloaded that yet, this would be a good time to download the student manual for today. And if you need any of the past ones, before we let Russ blow our minds with his content, we're gonna make sure if you need any of the past, we have videos of all of the past Zoom sessions for the shift trainings. So if you need those, you can put it in the chat that you'd like one of them, or you can email me. I'm gonna put my email down. Lisa's gonna join a little bit later today, so I'm gonna kick us off in about a minute.
No, thank you, Dylan. Question. I'm not going to be focusing on the chat box wherever it is. Would you be able, if someone
Yep.
raises their hand or just pops a question?
Definitely.
I got ADD, so you can interrupt and.
Yeah, when we open it up for questions, I'll definitely monitor the chat for you and help mediate. Yeah, if anyone has logistical questions, make sure to put it in the chat, and I'll answer those as we're going in the chat box.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and please, yeah, great reminder. Just as we're getting started here, it's 1 p.m. So I'm sure people will keep rolling in. But welcome everybody to shift number 9 with our guest Russ Tong. Before we get going, yeah, just a reminder to keep your microphones muted if you can throughout the session. If you have questions, please put them in the chat box, and sharing, please put them in the chat. We'll open it up later, I think, to discussion, and at that time you can turn your mics on later down in the thing. If you have the student manual, if you need it, send email to you again, let me know. It's in the chat box. But first, I want to introduce Russ Tong from Tong & Partners, co-founder and owner of Russ Tong & Partners team here at KW. I first got to meet Russ, not in person ever, but on our Monday Mindset call a couple weeks ago now. It's our first one for our Maui edition. And Russ, I was doing some research on your team, and first of all, you guys shared amazing content that time about 30 escrows in 30 days during the COVID pandemic, which is just crazy. So you guys are amazing. You gave all of your secrets away during that 30-minute call that day. And then since joining KW, I read this about you guys, your volume went up 306%. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Like that? And you're in Gary Keller's top 100.
Yes, sir.
So, this is huge to have you guys on this call, to have you on this call and sharing your secrets and really teaching us how to win with buyers and creating urgency is huge. So, the 17 people that are on this call right now are just going to be ready to get their minds blown. Russ, take it away.
All right. Well, good morning, or good afternoon, I guess. We're all shut off in dark rooms sometimes, so we lose track of time. But just wanted to say good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rustin Tong. I'm with Keller Williams. I've been with Keller Williams since 2012 is when we had initially joined the company. We had helped Colette and Rick. We had opened up the franchise here on Honolulu. And it's just been an absolute blessing to be a part of a company that truly believes in giving back. So, you know, our audience today is probably going to be a mix of individuals. There's going to be some KW, some non-KW. And that's not what it's about. It really is about us giving back knowledge, giving back wisdom, giving back good practices that work in the marketplace, regardless of what company that you're from. And that's just how we do things here. We're very much a giving company. Little background on me. I grew up on a ranch in Ewa Beach, of all things, here on Oahu, and just stumbled into real estate and, transitioned over into KW in 2012. Our production at that time was around 40 units. And since joining KW, it literally doubled from 40 to 78, 81. It was 101, 142, 152. And then last year we had a little bit of retraction. It was 78. However, year to date, in the first was May 20th, and we've already got 60 that are already either closed or pending. So we had a little bit of shifting, and that happens in any business. And so now it's time for us to really, that we've got momentum, we're going to continue moving that forward. So I do have ADD, so it's okay if you guys have a little chat box to the right or left or whatever is on your screen. Just go ahead and chat and or type any questions that you may have. And Dylan, just go ahead and flag me, and we'll definitely be able to get those answered.
Thanks, Russ. Yeah.
Thank you. It's going to be a little different in that it's, I'm not sure how other instructors teach. My style is more interactive. So we are going to do a little bit of participation going back and forth. We'll do a little bit of interaction as well, okay? So if you have a pen, some paper, get some notes. You can see it right at the top of the paper if you're typing out something too. But if you could take right on the top left-hand corner, AHAA, AHA, any AHA. That's going to be something like it clicks with you. If there's something that stands out to you, you write those down, okay? The second little area of the scratch paper. If you're not,
It's weird because
someone's
Hold on,
typing.
Russ, real quick. Sorry. If you guys aren't, can you guys mute your microphones real quick, please? We're hearing a little bit of feedback. It's a little
Cool.
difficult to hear you. Sorry. Just want to make sure if you guys could take a second and do that. Thank you very much. Sorry about that.
No worries. So you have your paper, you have your AHA on the left, you have your books, write down books, B-O-K-S, anywhere on there. And then also I want you to write down to-dos, T-O-D-O-S, success list, if we're going to label it correctly according to the one thing. And then what's your immediate next action? So just kind of those four things, just keep those on at the top of your paper or notes or wherever it is. And as we progress through the material, something's going to come up. You know, it could be from someone's question. It could be the interaction. It could be from the material itself. Regardless of the source, just go ahead and jot that down because if we aren't doing those types of things, then it's going to escape you. And that epiphany that you had, you take a while to get it back again. So, all right, let's go ahead and jump on in. I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see here real quick. Well, let me go this route, bro. Share screen here and share.
Russ, can you share with us those four things? It was AHA's books, success list, immediate next action.
Yes, sir. AHA's next action or success list, and then your action item.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Immediate action item. Because you'll have to do this like, oh yeah, that's a good point. I got to do this. Got to update my database. Oh, that's a good point. I got to go over here and send out, do a touch for pop buys. I bet whatever it is. So you're going to have a list that's going to be there, a running list that may come up, and then we want to focus on the one thing, and that's what your next action item is going to be. Okay. All right. So everyone, I'm assuming can see the screen. You can't just raise your hand and Dylan will know, or you can just do the chat box as well. So we're going to start off and kick everything off. This is going to be shift number 9, and it's about creating urgency to buy. And of course, it's a buyer's market. Does everyone understand the difference of a buyer's or seller's market? And what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to shift over to my screen so I can actually draw here. So what happens is that in any market, I'm just going to do a quick overview. In any market, you have the market goes up, it kind of plateaus, it goes down again, and then goes up. And this actually has been Hawaii's cycle for the last 40 years. And what happens is that as a market inclines, does anyone know what type of market that's called? You can just unmute yourself. Say again?
Seller's market.
Seller's market.
100% sellers, okay? So we have a seller's market. Okay, and then once it plateaus at the top, what type of market is that called?
Balanced market.
Ooh, love it. You get a gold star. Okay, so we have a balanced market. And then something happens here and the market starts to decline. And what type of market is that? Buyers.
Buyer's market.
100%. And then there's a plateau at the bottom, which goes back to, of course, a balanced market, right? If you can't read my handwriting, I apologize. I was a doctor in my formal life, but you'll get the gist of it. So we have a seller's market that transitions up. There's a balanced market that plateaus out, a buyer's market that declines down, and then a balanced market that's at the bottom. And then, of course, it transitions back into a seller's market. So this kind of check mark pattern has been repeating itself in our real estate market for the last 40 years. And right now, when it transitions, there's what are called shift points, which are going to be from a seller's market to a balanced market, from a balance to a buyer's, from a buyer's to a balance, from a balance back up into a seller's market. And these here are what are called shift points. And that's exactly what we're going through right now is we're shifting from a seller's market into this, what's called a balanced market, okay? So in this shifting process that takes place, people's perspective is going to be different. And we have to understand that in order to have a perspective, there's going to be a reference point in order to create that perspective. And I'll give you an example. So let's say that we're out going shopping and my grandfather, he's, I don't know, let's say he's 80 years old, and he looks over a loaf of bread on the counter and says, and it says, you know, $5.50 for the loaf of bread. In his mind, he's going to be thinking, man, that's an expensive loaf of bread. And then you have today's standards. Let's say you have your teenager walks into the store and he says $5.50 on the label of bread. And he's like, ooh, bread's on sale. And the issue is that you have a different reference point. We have grandpa who was referenced back when they had very, very difficult times. And the loaf of bread when he first was starting out was maybe 5 cents. And so you have two different reference points. And so what's happening in this transition or the shifting that takes place is the perspective that is there is based upon the individual's respective reference point, excuse me. It's based on their reference point. And so as sellers start going in to a balanced market, their reference point is gonna be like, oh, it's been amazing for this, for this entire ride all the way up on the market. That's what their perspective is because their reference point is there. When you look at buyers and buyers are like, you know what, the market's crashing, everything's coming down, COVID, whatever it is that's being said out there, they're gonna have a different reference point and therefore their perspective is going to be different. So let's, we're gonna transition back into the PowerPoint. So as we start getting into the material, there's going to be areas that we're going to be covering. The first is going to be perspective on creating urgency. The second is going to be being the expert. We're going to cover creating a buy list. We're also going to be doing do your homework. If you're not talking, if you could mute yourself, that'd be awesome. We have some background. Do your homework. Find it for them is number 5, and making a decision. And then number 7 is going to be the bottom line. All right. So in today's market, there's challenges, right? And the challenges tend to be is that the media creates this misconception. The media creates a misconception about buying homes today. And so what happens is that, does everyone understand the law of sowing and reaping? Is that if you tell someone something enough, they're eventually going to believe it. That's the harvest they're going to have in their life. And as the media continues to, hold on guys, I gotta just, Dylan, if you could just mute people as they're on there, that would be so awesome.
Yeah, Daniel Newbill, do you mind muting yourself? We're unable to mute you here. Keeps going back live. So Daniel, thank you so much.
Sorry, thanks guys. We'll get through this. It's a learning process. So what happens is the media starts to stir up and create misconceptions about buying homes today. There's fear about paying too much. There's a potential that buyers, there isn't an urgency to actually buy. And many agents, as a general thought process, they think that it's not a good time to buy. And so as we go through some of the material today, we want to dispel a lot of those particular challenges and answer and provide you enough knowledge that's going to help you to transition and move people forward regardless of the market, and especially in a market that tends to be declining, which essentially is a buyer's market. The truth is this, though, is that people are still buying homes in this market, and no one can truly time the market. Does everyone know how to get or access well, I don't know what island you guys are on. I'm going to share this with you guys. On our board, Honolulu Board of Realtors, we have something called the annual resale data. And on here, it goes through, and it's been tracking the market since 1985. Maybe I can make it a little bit bigger. Can you guys see that better? So it's been tracking the market since 1985, all the way through until current of 2019. And do we remember when we had the worst crash in our market's history? Does anyone know? You can just unmute yourself and talk to me if you could, please. When did we have the worst crash in the history of our market?
Was it 2008?
Yep, so it started in 200%, started in 2008, and when did it end?
2011, 10, 11.
2010, 11, okay? Now what's interesting is this. We have this annual resale data, right? So in 2008, when we go and we look back and we see the amount of, and this is of course gonna be total sales, right? You have condos and single family, you guys see those. When we go back and we look in 2008, there were still properties that were being sold. In fact, there was 6,674 homes that sold at that particular point in time. And even on the transition down, 6,052, 6,985. So properties still move. There had to be a buyer and there had to be a seller in order for those to take place. Which means if you were to, if you look at these particular times in the worst times in history, property still moves. Okay, so if you feel like nothing's happening, there's no properties that are actually moving, just know that it absolutely, there's properties that are moving on the market. Okay, now the solution in terms of those particular challenges is that we need to become or be an expert on the market and on the economy. And we're going to dive in a little bit later here, further into that annual resale data. Because I think that it's going to paint a real clear picture for us as far as the knowledge that we need to have as we're having dialogue with buyers and sellers. Okay. The second thing on a solution is to listen to buyers. And in terms of listening, one of the few things that I could absolutely recommend is being able to ask open-ended questions. And if you have a pen, write this statement down. Each buyer or seller, and we'll just say, well, we're talking on buyers, so we'll leave it at buyers. So each buyer already has the answer in their heart. We just haven't asked enough open-ended questions for them to tell us what's in their heart. Every buyer already has the answer in their heart. We just haven't asked enough open-ended questions in order to hear or understand and have them tell us what's in their heart. You got that one, Dylan?
Got it. Thank you.
You're a stud, dude. Thank you. And this particular philosophy has enabled us to be able to be in awkward situations. It could be in situations where we're believing a buyer thinks one thing and we ask enough open questions like, ooh, I'll give an example. There was a buyer that we had that, schools is what was important to them. So I was like, okay, and as an agent, we don't obviously name the academic schools. I said, you can go in the Department of Education and you can get the educational rating for the schools, and they'll have everything that's on there regarding that. And they're like, well, we want a school that's good in track and field because that's the sport that my son competes in. And so I was completely off base. And a lot of times when we get into conversations, if we're not coming from curiosity and we're already bringing in our perception of what the information that we're receiving from the buyers is, the challenge is that we're not truly listening to what it is that they're saying. And that's one thing that we need to constantly have and focus on as you have continued dialogue. All right. Pay attention to pricing and condition. There's matching needs and wants. There's lessen fears about buying, and find good, reliable mortgage programs. And these are potential solutions. And what's interesting is that these solutions, when we already have them in place, what that's going to produce is you're already going to have an answer to a question that they already may have. So as you go through, for example, we'll just pick out the good, reliable mortgage programs. Do you have different lenders kind of on your roster? I know, Keller Williams has his mortgage company. Each of the respective companies also have a mortgage company, excuse me. And so what programs do you have? Do you have VA? Do you have conventional? Do you have jumbo products for both? Do you have FHA, USDA, whatever the types of financing or programs are? And then keep a heartbeat on those. For those of you that for example, we'll talk about jumbo rates. Literally 2 to 3 weeks ago, the jumbo rates were just all over the place. And what happened is that there was a liquidity issue that on average, most mortgage lenders or banks will go through and they'll do, let's say about $2 trillion from January all the way through until December. And what happened in the first quarter is because interest rates dipped so low, there were so many refis and purchases. It was to the tune of almost $5 trillion. So that's like doing an entire year's worth, 2.5 times of it in literally one quarter. So when lenders have lines of credit, they go out and they lend, and all of a sudden now those lines of credits are gone because no one's buying those mortgages. There's too many of them on the market. And that's why they had to do quantitative easing, and they had to reintroduce, the government had to buy back to introduce liquidity back into the market. So the rates were volatile. We literally had 2 different mortgage brokers, excuse me, who are good friends, and they would actually bounce back and forth between rates. And there was one that was doing a $900,000 transaction that we had, that their rates were at 3.25, while lender number 2 was at 2.75. And so we just said, hey, lender number 1, your rates at this point are not as good as lender number 2. Let's switch. And we've gone back and forth between the two. So the point is that you want to have a solution and have those solutions already in your back pocket when those issues arise. All right, so let's jump in on being an expert. As far as, does anyone know what the top 20% of any agent's activities, what those should be? Can anyone rattle them off? There's 5 of them.
Lead gen, follow up. Oh, you have it on the screen.
Yep, keep going. Lead gen, follow up. There's appointments, there's negotiations, but number 5 is switch. What should be number 5?
Market research.
That's what it says there, correct. But what normally is number 5? We lead gen, lead follow up, appointments, negotiate for contracts. And then what's the normal top in the top 20%? What's the normal number 5? Starts with an S. So we should do every single morning before we get on lead gen.
Scripting.
Ooh, scripts and role play, Miss Catherine. Okay, so scripts and role play is normally on this chart here. However, in this shifting market and in when we're talking about buyers, they have switched out scripts and role play and they added market research. So personally, what I would do is I would just add number 6 and I would still have scripts and role play in there. But they've done market research for a reason. As an individual and as a buyer's agent in this specific case, we have to be the individuals that are going to be delivering the information that are going to be able to move people forward. Okay. If you have your course material, I want you to look just on page number 15. And at the bottom, there's a quote that says there. It says that, are you guys there? It says, people will buy homes when they what? People will buy homes when they what?
Feel comfortable with this big decision.
Ooh, Mrs. K, how? When they feel comfortable. If you have a pen, I want you to circle that. Circle the word feel and circle the word comfortable. Here, there's a bold law that says logic makes them think, emotion makes them act. Logic makes them think, emotion makes them act. And so what happens is that in order for someone to be moved, the emotion needs to be present. And in this case, the emotion of being comfortable is what has to exist. If this is the third largest decision of anyone's life, you've got basically God, family, and then real estate. This is the third largest decision anyone's going to make in their life. And do you think they're going to do it if they don't feel comfortable? Absolutely not. They're not going to. There's a great book. It's called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. Emotional Intelligence 2.0. I think Bradbury, I believe, is the author. The 2.0 is in orange, is what I remember. And the premise of that particular book is that we have the ability to create an emotional response in others by either doing something, not doing something, saying something, or not saying something. And the key is that in everything that we do, everything should line up to where, whether it's from the type of eye contact that we have, the word selection that we use, the tonality that we're introducing in the way that we speak, in the body language that we have, in how information is presented, all of that should be pointing and lining up with one thing, is that we're making the client feel comfortable about purchasing or buying or moving forward. Now, if you have a pen, I want you to write this statement down. The statement is this, is that the audience always demands the performance. The audience demands the performance. And in order for we as the performers to cater to the audience, we have to understand them. What's their personality type? If you haven't done the DISC, D-I-S-C, I would absolutely recommend doing the DISC. You know, we've got discs that we can administer. There's some free ones online if you just Google it. I think it's Tony Robbins' free disc assessment. So just go out there and do and get to know individuals and personalities, okay? Because that's going to enable us to be able to cater to those particular audience. Do you have a data guide? Are you able to rattle off the numbers? Do you have someone that's, you know, a little bit uneasy about whether they should buy now versus later? You know, are we able to do the calculations and say, here's all the numbers don't lie, and, you know, how do you feel about everything, and make them feel comfortable being able to move forward? So, you know, ultimately we want to make sure that we have that market research piece down in order for us to be able to sow the type of seed for the emotion that we want to create in their life. Okay, because words produce thoughts, thoughts produce knowledge, knowledge has an emotional tie-in, and then you have a belief system that causes someone to act. Okay, so there are always, the words that we use are extremely, extremely important, because ultimately that's going to create a belief system that causes someone to act. Okay, all right. Does anyone have any questions so far? We're zipping through here. All right. So in the expert, the 30,000 foot view is this, is that there's absolutely there's only two variables or two factors that influence the market. Now, if you have your page 16, look on page 16 of your handout, if you could please. And at the very bottom, if you want to highlight that, I would highlight that. It says price. So circle the word price and circle the word condition, price and condition. Circle those two words, if you could please. And then underline this, are the two factors that determine whether a home is on the market or in the market. And of course, there's a difference between being in the market and on the market. And you see that little graph above, right? The one that's on your screen for your PowerPoint. Being in the market is when pricing condition is that sweet spot where it's in a desirable place. On the market is in that out of the market area, that lighter yellow on your screen. And the reason why they say on the market, because your property sits on the market. So if your pricing condition are not right, you're going to be on the market for a while. Now, what's interesting is this, is that the two markets are this here. So that's the concept, pricing condition. Okay. One market, we have seller's market. Everyone see seller's market on the screen over here? Okay. I don't know if I should have done that. Oh, look at erases. We're good. Okay. Seller's market there. What happens is this. Do you see how large this in the market section is versus out of the market? Does anyone know? Could anyone tell me what makes this circle so much on the seller's market versus on the buyer's market?
Low inventory, lots of buyers.
FOMO.
Yes, but what makes it larger though? Do we know? Here, I'll show you. Remember our marketplaces now, right? Remember our market cycles that we went through. You guys see the screen? On a seller's market, we understand that the market's trend. Patricia, could you mute yourself for me, please? Thank you. On a seller's market, the market is going up, right? Okay. Market is transitioning up. This here is giving me your current market value. Wow. I can spell, I promise. Okay, that's your current market value. If someone places a house here on a seller's market, typically you've got, a bunch of activity that wants to buy that particular house. You guys see that? If someone prices their property way above the market, as long as time is there, eventually what's going to happen? The market's going to catch up to that particular house, that list price. You see that? So there's a greater room for error in terms of being in the market because you have the ability to let the market catch up to you. And you also have the ability to allow, you have the ability that buyers are willing to pay a little bit more than what that market, than what the market value, present day market value of that house is. That's ultimately how you have a rising market, right? If your comps are all over here, let's say they're at $500,000, and you have your 500, 490, I don't care, 495. So let's say the average of you're in contract right now at, 505 contract. They do the average of the two, it comes out to 495, is what your appraiser comes back with. And all of a sudden you're willing to pay, split the difference. Your buyers pay $5,000 over, seller reduces down by 5. So you close at 500,000. What's just happened? Last comp falls off, and now you've got 500, 500, and 495. The market value just moved up to 498, 499, thereabouts. Okay, so that's how, in terms of that's why this in the market screen right here, why it's so much, there's so much more room for error that can take place. I want you to write this down if you could. We want to lead and not follow. You want to lead and not follow. And this philosophy will help you regardless of the market cycle that you're in. You want to lead and not follow. And the reason is this, in a seller's market, in terms of your pricing and all of that, ultimately you are able to have a little bit of leeway, and you price your houses a little bit higher. Buyers are willing to pay a little bit more, right? What happens in a declining market? Let's say it's going down and here's a market value here. The same is true, is that typically buyers, where's my battery running low when I got it plugged in? There we go. Typically buyers in a buyer's market, as it declines, what happens is that we need to lead and not follow. So if you're ultimately pricing your houses, we should price it just a little bit below what the market value is. Then the market naturally falls onto it. The challenge is this though, and this is why this buyer's market here, why it's so much smaller in the market, is because the market's continuing to shift down, and most of the time sellers are not willing to admit and come down to the actual true market value. So you have this shifting point, right? What creates this in the market bubble right here? It's when you have a meeting of two minds. The meeting of the two minds is going to be between a seller and it's going to be between a buyer. And what happens is that in this yellow space, so much larger, because the seller's perception of what their property is actually worth is not where it actually should be, because they're living in the past. And so typically what happens is that you have this declining market. A seller says, no, I want to put it on the market here. By the time you put it on the market's already moved and transitioned down. And they're like, okay, well, no, we'll wait. Market's now here. Oh, let's do a price reduction. They reduce down to here. And yet the market still is below where they're at. And so what happens is you have this gradual step down until at the very end, they're like, you know what, just slash the price it right, and get it sold. And they do. And as a result of that, instead of them only losing, retracting a little bit more on value, they've now just lost all of this value here. Okay. So those are two type of markets that exist: buyer's market, seller's market. Does anyone have any questions at all? You can unmute yourself or chat. I'm not sure. Dylan, you're in control here.
Yeah,
so.
monitor. Yes, if anyone has questions, put in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask away. All right.
Good. All right.
I think we're all just so enamored by this information. Our minds are blown.
Dylan's a smooth talker, guys. You got to watch out for him. All right.
Hey, we have one real quick from Patricia. Asks, how often do you update clients with Shift? That's what the question is. Patricia, can you maybe unmute and ask, kind of expand more on what you're asking?
Yeah, but I apologize. The kids are in the yard, so there's a lot of noise in the background.
All right.
Because the market's shifting, we still have low inventory, but some things are getting multiple offers. Other things are just sitting on the market. Are you updating them once a week? Because it's like the sellers still aren't listening to you. I mean, Hawaii's unemployment rate is outrageous. Yep. What's happening right now is outrageous. And there's no real good models to go to. You can talk about Paul Brubaker till you're blue in the face, but if we're really heading into essentially the first time in our history, both a depression and a recession, if you want to sell this property, we got to price it to sell and quit chasing this market. So when you're trying to keep your clients updated, I mean, how often and what kind of conversations are you having?
Sure. Now, are you referencing buyers or sellers?
Both.
Okay. So there's two because there's two different conversations, right? In terms of so let's just look real quick at what you were describing earlier. Okay, you've got a bunch of inventory that was on the market, right? And that was the existing inventory. This is going to be pre-COVID, okay? Does anyone know what took place probably around December, January, as far as the interest rates were concerned? What happened?
They fell. They
Correct.
stayed the same. They're at like 2.3 point. They're really low.
Correct. 2.75 in actuality. Rory right now has, if you're buying between 500 to 65,000, excuse me, is at 2.25% for VA. Let me clarify that. Okay.
Unless you got a bad lender. I just got out of escrow with the buyer's lender was telling them 5.25.
Yep, and that's because they have liquidity issues, Patricia. They don't have their lines of credit that they've used have already been exhausted. So the investors have increased the interest rates high enough to a point where it gives you the exact same reaction you just had, like, ooh, do we really want to buy right now? So there are multiple lenders that you can actually have conversations with, and their pricing is always going to fluctuate. Sometimes one will be great, the other times the other one will be better, and just you've got to have those relationships. So let's move forward. So the interest rates started coming down, right, significantly. They started dropping. And you have the sell side on one side, and you have the buyers. Wow, should have been a doctor. You have the buyers on the other side, okay? And what happens is this, is that COVID comes along, and basically it kind of wipes out a portion of the material of the product that's on the market, okay? So what happened? What just happened to your supply? It went down, right? You got less supply. However, when the interest rates, as they continue to drop, what happened over here on the right side of the column as far as the buyers are concerned? They're the demand side.
It went up.
What? Let's go ahead. Marcus, what was that?
The demand went up.
100%, sir. You're absolutely correct. The demand went up. And so you have this inversion that's taken place where the supply shrunk, the demand went up. So to answer your question, Patricia, when a house is priced correctly and it's within that level of demand that's going to exist, you're going to have multiple offers on it. That's just what the case is going to be. Okay, now so in terms of the buyer's side standpoint, when you have those types of situations that are introduced, we have to be able to have the conversations and say, look, guys, I get that they say that there's COVID and everything else at the market that we're actually in. I understand that. Yet here's the reality of it. The supply of the houses has been reduced. The people that are selling, they're serious sellers because they're selling in the present condition market that we're in. The buyers that are in the market, absolutely 100%, they're serious too. They're actually going out with masks and gloves, baby wiping everything down from house to house they go and they view. So when we see a property that is something that's going to suit your wants and needs, we need to move forward on it because in this market, it's going to be gone. And as you have those I call them set expectation conversations with your buyers, when it does come to the point of when they need to move forward, you've already laid enough. You already have laid enough thoughts. I'll go beyond that. You've laid enough thoughts to be able to produce enough knowledge for them to be able to move and act. It's when we don't set the expectations. It's when we're not having the continued conversation throughout every single process, starting from the time that you have your buyer's consultation. You should be having these set expectations conversations. The time that you go through the pre-approval process, once they get done with the lender, are you having a set expectation conversation? When you're going and transitioning into the showings portion of it, are you having the setting expectation conversation? Your words are so powerful; they should all be lining up so that when action needs to be taken, they move forward. Because they're comfortable enough. It's the norm. You've been hitting on this time and time and time again. Now use wisdom, obviously. You're not gonna like cramming something down their throat, but use wisdom in how you present information.
Russ, could you give us an example of what that setting expectations conversation is that you're having?
Sure. So I personally I've never asked anyone, do you want to write an offer? Should we write an offer? I don't ask yes and no questions. If you want to write this script down, you're more than welcome to. So here's what we're going to do, ... How does that sound? So here's what we're going to do. How does that sound? And I'll give you an example of that. Let's say we go through our buyer's consultations. We got their wants and needs. We understand their motive for buying. When you go through, and we're actually going to probably get into it a little bit later in the material, but I'll just go through it right now. There's a conversation, a script that you can call, it's called DRAW, D-R-A-W. And the DRAW, the D stands for desires. The R-A-W, the R equals ready, A is able, and the D is, W is willing. Okay, ready, able, willing. And then we tacked on the word desires for a reason. So ready equals time, able equals money, willing is what their motive is, or their why, okay? The desires have to do with the emotional state. Who wants to role play with me? All right, Catherine, I see your name first. Let's go, girl. You ready? I'm voluntolding you.
Okay. Don't embarrass me.
No, you're the buyer. So you're a buyer. And I don't know, you've called in our website, okay? Or yeah, you called in on our website. And so we're gonna go through the conversation real quick. So, ring, ring.
Oh, I'm calling you. Ring, ring. I'm looking for Rustin, please.
I'm agent. You're buyer.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so ring, ring. Hello.
Oh. Hi. Hello. This is Catherine.
Hey, Catherine. How are you doing? It's Rustin Tong. I noticed you on our website taking a look at some different properties, and just wanted to reach out and touch base with you, see how we're able to help you with your real estate needs.
Oh yeah. I was just looking at this property, and I don't know. I'm curious. What do you think about the time to buy right now? I've been looking for a while, and I was starting to get ready, but then COVID happened.
No, I completely understand, and thank you for sharing that. So you mentioned you were looking at property. Tell me a little bit about what you were looking at.
I'm looking for a 3-bedroom house, 2-bath in the Mililani area, and I think the max I can spend is $900,000. But I'm wondering if maybe prices are going to start coming down, so I thought maybe I should wait.
Perfect. Thank you for that. No, I hear you on prices and reality though, Catherine, that a buyer purchases, and well, let me get some clarity just real quick. This house that you're wanting to buy, this 3-bedroom, 2-bath for $900,000 over in Mililani, is that something for a short-term buy or a long-term?
No, long-term. I live on Kauai now, and I'm thinking it might be time to move over there and switch careers. So no, it's going to be long-term. I'm going to live in the house. Okay.
So if I could encourage you, when we're talking about long-term, the reality is that any long-term purchase is driven by interest rate.
Okay.
So when the interest rates being the way that they are, they're extremely low, it is a good time to purchase.
Okay.
And here's what I mean by that. And when you guys can see my screen, so I'm gonna, typically I can draw for someone. That if someone, if we were to purchase a property, and let's say that today was at 900,000, Catherine, when we had the worst retraction in our entire history from 2008 until 2010. Do you know how much the percentage of price reduction that took place back then?
Price reduction, probably about 25%, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's a great guess. It actually only reduced down by 10.6%. That's what it reduced down by. Okay, so if we were to take this same house, let's say you were to buy it here today, and we wanted to wait and try and attempt to time the market. So $900,000, and at today's interest rate is 2.75%. And at 2.75%, I'm gonna just do my mortgage calculator because I have it on my phone. So at $900,000 at 2.75%, 900. Wow, that's 9 million. That'd be exciting, wouldn't it? At 2.75% right now is going to run you, and this is not going to include real property taxes or HO3 or HO6 insurance. It's just principal and interest. It's going to run you $36.74 is what your monthly payment is going to be. Okay.
That's 20% down?
No, that's 0% down. I'm just running.
Okay.
I'm just running the hard numbers for you because the loan balance will shift no matter what. Because if you put 20% down on 900, or you put 20% down on a 810,000, the loan balance is going to be reduced. So I'm going to do worst case scenario for you. Okay.
Okay, good.
So we've got 900,000 at 2.75, and let's say that we had a 10.6 retraction. We'll just call it 11% just for easy math. So we're what, at 810, 805, $805,000. Okay, and the interest rates obviously are not going to be able to stay this low forever. We understand that. So even if they were to go up just 1%, so now we're at 805,000, and that's at just 1%, 3.75%. Your monthly payment, Catherine, is going to be $3728.11. So I completely understand.
Goes up.
Yeah, it's higher. You're 100%. It's $50 higher, in fact. So I absolutely hear and understand that it's something that is important to be able to get a good price. And we are going to get a good price. We're going to get a good price and also get a good interest rate. Because the only thing that really matters is going to be your monthly payment.
Well, plus I'll probably pay a lot more with that 1% increase over time on just a $100,000 difference.
Correct. In interest alone, you're going to have that. You also have the distance of time. So right now, in the market that we're in right now, we have the remaining of about we'll call it 1 year. We have 1 year left on our balance market. We've got 2 years is the average of every retraction that we've ever been through for the last 40 years. Has only been 2 years. So let's say you did have perfect timing and you bought here at the bottom within this first year. So that's 1, 2, 3. That's 4 years worth of payments that are gonna be available that you're gonna have. And even at that $900,000, better type it back in again. Sorry. And even at that $900,000 at 2.75%, when I hit amortization on my calculator, it's going to be an average, because that's going to be 4 years. So at month 24 is going to be $1,698. Let's just say $1,700 per month. That's the principal pay down. Okay, and then the interest on that is going to be at $1,975. That's interest. So let's just take the principal, for example. Okay, so we've got $1,700. We're going to take that. We're going to multiply that by 48 months, because that's how long that the timing, essentially our timing, we believe is going to buy at the bottom of the market, times 48. So you're at 81,600 is what your principal balance would have been paid down to. Okay.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind now, we haven't calculated the interest write-off, which typically will be probably another, I would say another 20,000. That's just rough numbers.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
For the 4-year period. So we're already at $101,000 below market of what we bought it. So you take 900, subtract 101, you're at what, 799, versus buying it today at 805, paying a higher interest rate and a higher payment.
Right, got it.
So in reality, Catherine, it really, interest rate is what drives long-term purchases. You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Done. Thank you. That makes
Absolutely.
sense.
So you want to make sure that you introduce the time factor, because most people don't realize that time has to transpire in order for them to buy at that one point. 1 year is here, sorry. Okay.
So did you say that the retraction, meaning like the dip in the market, usually is about 2 years and then it starts to increase after 2 years? Because you said 4 years later.
So here, I'll show you. I'm going to go to, this is the annual resale data. We have it for our marketplace. I'm going to assume you guys have it for yours too. I would like to believe that you do. I don't know. This is Oahu because it says Oahu.
I don't think we have this information, but
Okay.
it's okay.
Essentially, here's what I mean by that. From 2000, I'm gonna toggle back and forth between two different things now. All of this data right here has been placed on this median sales price graph. This is page 26 in the Oahu statistical report. Okay. So we're gonna take 2008 to 2010. So basically from here, I'm gonna kind of balance it out until we got here. How many years is that?
Yeah, 2 years.
You take about 1996 to 90. How many years is that?
Sorry, I didn't hear you. From where to where?
96 to 98.
Oh, I see. Oh yeah, 2 years.
Oh, you're good. So you're in both of those retractions over the last 40 years, we know that at the retractions that took place in Hawaii's market, typically, I'll be very careful. I'm not trying to get off into a place where you're going to be predicting the market. We're going off of historical data now, okay? Typically, our retracting markets have been 2 years. So now let's look at the plateaued markets, okay?
Russ, real quick, sorry to interrupt. We have a question from Daniel. He was wondering what you're calling that again. Is it time? He said time distance of money.
When you say labeling it, you have to introduce time in order to be able to truly have most people just look at one thing. They look at the price. If I buy here, I'm gonna zoom this in. Sorry guys, you guys can see that okay? Make it a little bit smaller. So if I buy a house here versus buying a house here, the common knowledge or common thought is that, hey, I got a better deal on my house. Okay. What we never ever introduce is the time factor from buying here versus buying here at the bottom. That's 1, 2, 3, basically 3.5 to 4 years that we bought. Okay. So this 4 years is the amount of time that you're going to be buying today versus essentially buying tomorrow, or in the future rather, not tomorrow, at this low point here. Because time has been introduced into this equation, we have to calculate what it is that truly took place. Not only is your monthly payment going to be lower, because we're making presumptions or assumptions in this case as far as the interest rates going up by 1%. That's a very realistic perception. It's not like 15% or interest rates are going to go all the way up to 27%. No, we're talking 1%. It'll shift like that. It shifts back and forth, and it's very easy to be able to. So that's a agreeable amount, right? It's not outrageous, which is why I went at that 1% from today's interest rates of 2.75% to 3.75%. Sorry, doctor. Then you look at the prices of Catherine, you said 900, and then we said 810 or 805, whatever it was here. We went to 11, I guess 11%. And by the time that this house, by the values get down to this price point of where you want to buy, you already will have had $81,000 in principal pay down. And you already will have had roughly about $20,000 in rebates of interest because you're living in the house. that's going to be given back to you, right, on your tax returns. Okay.
Right.
Now, we're not tax experts. I'm just going to be very clear. These are just numbers that are estimates. They're not obviously to the penny. I don't know what type of write-offs and everything you have. And this is only at a 0.25% calculation. If someone's instead of someone being a 25% bracket, if they were in a 30 or 40% tax bracket, these numbers would look way better. We're always running conservative numbers though. Okay.
Right.
That's how we got to this $101 that we subtracted off of the 900. Okay.
Right.
And then also the same thing. Well, yes, Lisa, I saw the tenant. If you're paying rent, you're 100% correct in that you're losing that money. If you buy though, your money is still going to go somewhere. So I didn't even take that into consideration. You're 100% correct. So if you're renting here, this picture looks even worse. Let's say you're renting just for, I don't know, $2,000 per month. And if you're buying a $900,000 property, it's probably not going to be, it'll be a little bit more. At $900,000, you're probably renting at $3,000 a month because it's kind of it's a little bit less than what's in there. So you got $3,000 a month for renting. 3 times 12 is 36 times 4 years is basically almost $160,000. So then you add 160 to your 805 price and you're at 965. Is what you really have paid for that lower priced house that's going to be cost more per month. And hypothetically, you believe that it's paying for more, but you really paid 965. So is 965 more than 900? Obviously more, right? At the end of the day, though, at this point of when you actually buy this house, the value of it is not at 900. The value of that is going to be at 799. So would you rather at this particular point in time, would you rather buy a house for $800,000 and have a what was it, a $50 a month less payment per month, or would you rather buy a $965,000 house and have a higher payment by $50 a month? No brainer, right? And here's the
I
thing:
want the lesser payment.
100%. You don't gotta tell. Okay, I'm Chinese, and I make Chinese jokes, but you don't gotta tell a Chinese guy that twice. You get something cheaper, less per month. We going for it, okay?
Hey, Russ, we have a quick question here. That's so funny. From Lisa kind of just answered it. Okay, well, we'll ask it to Russ too. Anne Marie said, "Do you address the idea of the amount of equity they could be earning when buying now rather than later?"
Typically, I don't introduce, that's a great question. Thank you for that. Typically, I don't introduce equity because equity, wow, wrong one. Okay, we buy a house, let's say market's declining. Your cost, this is your cost to hold the asset. You have what's called above the line, which is appreciation. And you have below the line, which is principal pay down. Typically, let's see, it goes back up again, okay? Typically, your equity, your appreciation is like the elusive white unicorn, okay? Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. We know that for the history of Oahu's properties, no matter what stage that we bought in, I mean, I don't care if you bought here at the top of the market or, you know, you bought here at the bottom of the market, as long as we wait enough time, appreciation will always introduce itself. Does that make sense? So the appreciation question, Anne Marie, it's a very, it's one that you can pull out of your pocket. Yes, in terms of equity, that they are going to have principal paid down and their balance will be less. So you can go down that path if you want. Ultimately, though, I really don't introduce the word equity. I just say that your loan balance is going to be less than what it is, because the money that you would have been spending towards renting is now going towards the actual purchase. You also have the ability to be able to write off the interest rate as well. Excuse me, the interest that you're getting on it, the good interest. Go ahead. Who's got a question? Sorry.
Yeah, it's Anne Marie here. Thanks for answering that question. I think my point was more to if you're a renter and you're giving somebody else your money, somebody else is earning money based on you. If you're an owner, your money is going into your pocket and your property. So sometimes maybe a first-time buyer doesn't realize that. And is that something you would consider talking with people or not?
Oh yeah, you'll know your clients. You'll know what information. It's a fine balance of emotion overload versus providing enough information. I want you to catch this. Providing enough information so that it produces a feeling of being comfortable. The instant that you provide too much information, you're going to produce the emotion of feeling overwhelmed. You've gone too far. So it's when you're with sales, it's a healthy balance of a dance that we're doing, of providing enough information and then layering in the words that we're using to make someone ultimately feel comfortable to move forward. So I absolutely 100%, Anne-Marie, if you're as you're providing information, and you'll see it, that their eyes will start to glaze over. Then you got to pull back on how much information you're dumping on them, because it'll make them feel too anxious, and they're not going to move. They'll freeze.
That's awesome. Hey,
yep.
Oh, sorry, Russ. Well, another question here. How can we apply this to a second home? This is a question from Lisa Velasquez.
Okay, second home. So second home is it's a little different in that you still have the principal pay down factor, because we are able to introduce time into it. And as they make payments, obviously their loan balance goes lower. The interest rate, they can't write that off. However, they still have the ability to continue putting money towards that particular asset. And no matter what, your interest rates, whether it's second home or basically investment property, it's always going to be 0.75 to maybe, between 0.5% to 1% higher than your standard owner-occupant rates. So for example, if we're at, I don't know, I'm just going to use easy math. If we're at 3.5, investor rate may be at 4% to 4.5% is what they may be at. So from that standpoint, the interest rate portion will always remain the same. Does that make sense? You can still always introduce the interest rate portion of the equation that we did, or the conversation that we had. You can always introduce that into the equation, because the interest rates, whether it's conventional at 3% and then owner occupant at 3% and then it raises to 4%, or an investor rate at 4% and then it raises to 5%, it'll be the same.
Thanks. That makes sense. Just focus on the interest rate, because a lot of my buyers are, second home buyers, and they all are waiting for everything to drop out, and I'm trying to create urgency for them to not wait. Thank you.
100%. My pleasure. Any long-term buy, whether you're second home or whether it's owner occupant, it's always interest rate driven, 100%. And then when it doesn't become interest rate driven, we'll figure something else out. I'm just kidding. It still is interest rate driven. At that point, we switch over to cash flow is really what we do. And I know we're not going to have the time to get into that level of conversation, but I absolutely would switch over into cash flow and looking to see how to create a business out of that particular house, which is an entirely separate conversation. Okay, cool. Any other questions?
Couple more questions. Yep, we have a couple more here. What about a short-term buy, 3 years for VA?
Sure. Okay. I personally, I don't go down the path of short-term buy. When we have conversations with our VA buyers, it's always on the premise of a buy and hold. Short-term buys are the riskiest thing you can do, and here's why. And I don't care even if we're in a rising market, okay, market's going up. If you buy here, let's say that the sales price is, I don't know, we'll use 600,000, okay? With the VA, I'm assuming that they're active duty. They have a VA funding fee, which is at 2.3% for their first time use, 3.6 for their second time use. So automatically 2.3 to 3.6 gets tacked on to the principal balance. Okay, this is their VA funding fee. Now let's fast forward. Let's say they're here, they want to sell the property. And I know we're not supposed to say commissions and dollars and all that kind of stuff, but this is just, we're just having a conversation here. In a general rule, what is the acceptable or the perceived amount? Because it ranges from market to market. When a seller sells the house, you've got two expenses: closing costs, and you got the commissions. Okay, your closing costs typically are going to be right around 1%. We know that. So it's closing costs. And then you have your typical commissions. Let's just say it's at, I don't know, 5%. I'm not setting a standard here. I'm just using a general thing. Okay. So we've got 6 here, plus we've got at least on the low side. So it's got to be at 8.3% or at 9.6% is what the property has to appreciate by, just so you can get back basically to about break even. Okay. Now remember, we had introduced the annual resale data to you. When you go back and you look at the annual resale data, if you're doing a short-term buy, and let's say they just bought in 2015, to get to 10%, it's got to be 3, 8, 10, 11.4, just about here. In order for them to, they have to have time the market so perfectly that they're going to be able to sell within that perfect marketplace. And the challenge is that when you've got those short-term type of predictions and buys that you're doing, the challenge becomes is that it's a very risky thing to do, which is why we normally don't set the expectations for that. And normally what we do is we set the expectations on buying and holding the property. And we go through an entire conversation about when someone buys a property, we run the entire, what's called the total monthly NUT, which is a total expense for the house itself. So you have your principal and interest, you've got your real property taxes, your HO6, your insurance, right? HO3, HO6 insurance. If there's a maint fee, you have your maintenance fee. Basically all the expenses, we add them up. And this equals your total monthly NUT is what we call it. And then from there, what we do is we take that, this is principal and interest, by the way. We subtract out the rent. And then if there's property management, we run all of those numbers and we just ask the very simple question: is it positive? Is it negative? Is it break even? And typically it's going to be in this category. I'm not sure, which market that you're in. So we ask the hard question: is this something you're comfortable holding, for a period of time? And on average, our market is always going from high to high within a 12-year cycle, excuse me. And if they are, then we move forward. If they're not, then they have a decision. We can chance and time the market. And we always are wanting to set their expectations for the worst case scenario, which would be to buy and hold. If you plan for the worst and expect the best, then you're okay. So plan for the worst and expect the best. All right. Any other questions?
That's it for right now. Thanks, Russ. That was good.
All right. We probably will have covered some of the material, but let's just kind of go through everything. Okay, so in reasons for buying now, I would put a gold star next to this one. The mortgage rates are low. And you can go through that simple calculation with your clients and say, look, you buy here versus here, show them the data. 10.9% is 10.6% is what we lost. And you can actually show them the true data and go off of actual numbers for your respective marketplaces. Home prices have become more affordable. So yes, there can be, and the reason why they become affordable is the individuals that are serious about selling, they're going to be pricing their houses right. So there still will be a little bit of resistance. However, they are going to, with the way that the market has been kind of softening everyone up, 100% the prices are going to be at a good place. Inventory is high. It may be a little bit higher. And we're talking actually about a true buyer's market. This is not like a COVID market that we're in. But in essence, it would apply in both cases, is that the inventory that is on the market, they're serious about selling. I would introduce, in terms of negotiating, I would actually introduce the negotiation factor. I'm starting to see in some of our buyers, we're asking for, $5,000, $10,000 closing cost credit. We got one ridiculous. It was like $20,000 in closing cost credits. But check with your lender, because typically each lender has a threshold of the height that you can ask. I believe for FHA, I think it's 2%. Well, don't quote me on it. One is 2, 4, and 6. I think conventional 6, VA is 4, and FHA is 2. But talk with your lender and see. And that's the ceiling on the amount of credits you can actually get back if you are asking for closing cost credit. But again, if you're taking your buyer into a war, you better be skippy sure that you understand what the terrain is and what's going on. You're not going to jump out of an airplane with an aqualung on your back. You certainly aren't going to jump into the ocean with a parachute on your back. You're going to die on both occasions. So you know what your battlefield is. You know what the lay of the land is, what the variables are. There are multiple offers. Has a property been sitting for a long period of time? Is it vacant? When you have those types of variables, you'll be able to look and say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, be skippy sure. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, there's no offers on this property. It is sitting vacant. So why don't we try and create a win-win here? Why don't we come in with a shorter timeline to close, which typically nowadays, because of the current COVID conditions, is about 45 days. Sometimes you get down to a 40, but 45 is about, kind of where it's at. And then let's ask for a little bit of credits. Let's ask for, 3,000, 5,000, whatever it is. You'll have that feeling in your heart. And then just roll with it. All right. They go through, determine the willingness. Do you want to risk missing a house that is perfect for you because you're waiting for the sliver of savings that you can make? This is a little bit different style. They have different teachers. We're buyer's agents in this particular role. You are a buyer's agent. You're not a taxi driver. You're not a tourist, a sightseer, one of those guys that give the tour. You're not a tour guide. You're an individual. You are a professional real estate agent. And when someone gets in your car, if you've asked the open-ended questions, if you've listened and you heard their responses, and you understand the inventory that will match up with that, the likelihood and probability is that they should be writing an offer within the first, at least by the third time that you've gone showing. If they have not written an offer within, and this is, again, let me qualify this, our own personal internal way that we do business. If they refuse to write an offer by the third time, we've missed something, and that's on us. So back to, Dylan, back to the setting expectation conversation we have. If we're going to go out and look at properties, we got all the MLS printouts. We basically say, look, we're going to go through, and as we go through the properties, make a nickname at the top of your property, because that's going to help you recall, certain features about the property. We also will make notes. And what I want us to do is that I want us to be able to go through and mark and choose which are going to be your top 3. And then after we go through, at the end of the day, we'll pick your top 3. We'll be able to go back and get some background information on those, and we'll be able to go through and help you put together an offer on the number 1 choice that you guys have. How does that sound? All right, so here's what we're going to do. How does that sound? That's all it is. So when we're done with the showing,
great.
Thank you. So when we're done with the showings, guess what happens? Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, we've gone through all the properties that we've looked at today. I noticed that you love the yellow dog house and the pink tree house and the whatever cat house. You got, those are your top three. Mr. Buyer or Mrs. Buyer, you know, which were your top three? You know, oh, I loved all. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. That's your order. Mr. Buyer, what's your top three? You know, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it sounds like property number 2 is both high on your guys's on your scale. Would you agree on that? Yes, we agree on that. Perfect. So here's what I'm going to do. ... Here, how's it sound? Here's what I'm going to do. We're going to go back. We're going to get the background information on the property. We'll see how many, if they have any offers. We'll see. We'll run the comps for you, and we'll be able to put together an offer for you guys. How does that sound? That's it. Don't ask them, do you want to write an offer? You're not a taxi driver. You're a professional real estate agent. Sorry, I get a little heated when I'm gonna camp on this just for one more minute. Whoever decided to create the perception that it has to take a prolonged period of time in order for a buyer to move forward on a property, either that's a story you're telling yourself or someone has fed you that. And if someone has fed you that, I want to apologize on their behalf because they're entirely incorrect. We can have the process dialed in so much that from the time that you shake someone's hand, hi, nice to meet you, do your buyer's consultation, you get them pre-approved, you go through and you've got your pre-approval letter, you go through the shopping process, the time that they write an offer and it gets accepted, our personal average time is 7 days. 7 days. That's normally what it takes for ourselves and anyone that's on our team. The quickest that I've done it, and I'm not going to toot my home horn, I will just a little, it was literally 24 hours from the time I met someone, had dialogue with the lender. They already had their docs, so it's not like they were gathering docs. They had dialogue with the lender. They were pre-approved. So the next day, they wrote a contract the very next day, within a 24-hour period. All I'm saying is this, guys. We need to be able to shift your reference point just a little bit so that the perception changes as to how long it should actually take a buyer to get in. And take responsibility. If we're not asking the open-ended questions, then shame on us. We should be asking open, because it's not about you. It's about the buyer. And it's about us understanding what it is that they're wanting. I mean, we're kind of like, if you want to get, we're kind of like a Yenta, where you literally are matchmaking between properties and the buyer's expectations. Was there a question? I don't know. I saw it.
We have a couple of things here. Gabriella asked if you could repeat real quick, or just the appreciation percentage needed for a VA buyer to be after that 3-year mark. Is it 8.6 to 9.3? She was just wondering.
Oh yeah, we'll go back. Where are we?
We can go, yeah, and then Lisa just said, love that. Shar put in here, we are not Uber. Assume the close that you are the best buyer's agent they are working with. And Lisa said, that's how you get 30 properties, pen 30 properties during the COVID market, Tong and Partners. So just some awesome work there. And then Daniel just asked, do you have a list of the open-ended questions you're asking that you could share?
I'm looking at the camera because I know my wife's probably looking back at me going, we have some scripts. So sorry, Shar. We do have some scripts that we absolutely can share. Now, I'm not saying go for it, like not going to share. I just don't have them written down. They're like here in our heart. So that is definitely something if there's, the reality in terms of scripts, so here's what we're going to do. How does that sound? That transitions a buyer. And let's break it apart just for a second. Well, let's pause because ADD is setting in. Gabby, to answer your question, the reason why it's at, if you look on your screen, is we have the VA funding fee. From the time that a buyer buys, there's a VA funding fee, and there's closing costs and potential commissions. That's how we arrived to these two figures down here. If they're buying a first-time home buyer as a VA, their funding fees at 2.3%. And then if it's a second-time home use, then it's 3.6%. That's how we got these two numbers here. And if my math is off, it's because I don't have my abacus. I apologize. But anyway, so that's how we got to those numbers. Because in the future, when they sell, that's going to be their selling expenses, right? Were there other questions? I saw something pop up.
Does that work? Yeah, there's a bunch popping up. So just want to finish that one first. Gabriella, that was, so yeah, that got that one taken care of. Char's gonna be sharing some scripts here as well. Audrey asks, how do you deal with someone if they are motivated, ready, willing, and able, but looking for something unrealistic and waiting for the needle in the haystack?
Oh, I love this one. There's an actual script. We don't have it scripted yet, but I'll tell you the script. It's called the Come to Jesus script. And the Come to Jesus script is having a very realistic conversation with them. And part of it is saying, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, here's in essence where the market is on your comfort price range. And I'll reiterate it. Let's say it's, I don't know, $3,000 per month. Now, we've been out, this is now the second time that we've gone out. We're about to go on the third time. And at this particular point in time, we're missing the mark here. So we need to have a little bit of a come to Jesus conversation here. The product that you're wanting, because we can do one of two things. We can either shift down or shift up in what your comfort price range is on a monthly basis. If we shift down, do you believe that the quality of product that you are wanting is going to exist there? Answer is no, because her expectation is up here. So we can shift down. Do you believe the quality of your product is going to be there? No, probably isn't. Do you believe then that if we shifted and went higher in purchase price, that the product that you're looking for would exist? Obviously, they're going to say yes. So we have a decision to make, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. Either we're going to need to increase on your purchase price or your comfort price range in order to match the product that actually suits and is within that bandwidth, or we're going to have to retract a little bit on the expectations of what exists within your bandwidth. And when we do that, we'll be able to have and create a process that's not going to be frustrating. Because you can be waiting. I've had a buyer, and I'll just use a story that we've done. We had a buyer, and this is back when the market was rising. And here's market value. We were looking at properties that were, let's say, it literally was. They were at $1 million properties, and the first offer that we wanted to write, he came in and said, "All right, I want to put an offer in for $800,000." I said, "I'm sorry, the comps are showing $1 million, and you want to come in at 8?" He's like, "Yep, we want that." And no joke, Aubrey, this is the exact words he used. "We want that needle in the haystack." I said, "Okay." I said, "Let's just take a quick pause here just for a second." And I literally pulled the sheet out. And I said, this is the annual resale data, by the way. Just delete all this. And I said, we're here. It's 2000. And it was, I'm just gonna say 2015. And you're wanting to get a property 20% below market value because we're buying $1 million, you're coming in at 800. So 20%, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. 3, 7, 8.5, 15. This is a balance. This is even belower. So you're basically saying, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, that you want a seller to sell you a property that was at a 2006 price for basically today's market. Is that, did I miss that? So let's just transition for a second. If you were in the seller's position, would you sell your property for $20,000 below? And I get to 20,000 actually was here actually. Is that something that you would do as a seller? Would you sell your house $200,000 or 20% below? And the answer is no. So if someone else wouldn't do that, then if you wouldn't do that, then why would you? What's the expectation of it being realistic that someone else is going to do that? It's not. They're not going to do that. So either A, we can do one of two things. We can go out and we can shift either our price point to a higher price point that's going to work out for you, or B, what we can do is that we can reduce down on the expectations. Which would you like to do? And you back them into a
That's
corner.
awesome.
They have to make a decision. And if it's unrealistic, here's the thing, walk away. Or you can refer them to someone and someone else can invest their time in them. If you're not in front of realistic buyers, I was gonna say sellers too, but we're talking about buyers. If we're not in front of a realistic buyer, the likelihood is that you're gonna be spending your time on that one buyer when you could already have 4 others in escrow. Give them the opportunity, because it's a perception change now. Give them an opportunity to reach a certain level of understanding to where they can shift that perception. You have to be a little patient because it's people. They're changing their belief system. And yet, once you've given them the opportunity, you've given them enough knowledge and enough data for them to switch. And if they're still viewing it that way, then you have to make a decision. You may have to walk away.
Perfect. Thank you. We have one more quick question from Gabriella. That was awesome. Those are some great scripts. I tried to write down a lot of it in a comment in the chat here if people want to go back and look at that. Gabriella said, how do you deal with, love this question, how do you deal with marital stuff that may be going on with the buyers that interferes with the process?
So one wants to buy, one doesn't want to buy, or they're getting a divorce. And
Yeah, Gabriella,
need more
great
clarity.
question. Yeah, if you can add some clarity, Gabriella, are you on? Can you unmute yourself? Gabriella?
Yeah, this is Gabby.
Oh, there you go.
So yeah, possible divorce, just kind of unsure as to what their futures together type of stuff, or like maybe just in general, like fighting, that kind of like, it just makes you uncomfortable to like even help them buy a place.
Sure.
Type of stuff. Like, I don't know, like any marital stuff that you're just kind of like thrown off
Sure.
with
So,
the process.
so there's, because we have a level of influence as professionals, we have the ability to influence people to move. That also has a very high level of responsibility. And if there are some agents that will use that in order to move someone in a direction that really is not in their best interest. And that's called manipulation. That's wrong. And so if you're feeling like this may not necessarily be the best decision for them, you can ask for clarity and just say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page, and that this, purchasing a home is something that you guys are absolutely comfortable doing, and that's something that you guys, still want to do. And I would just ask the question. And there's no judgment. Obviously we're here to serve you and help you transition into this, this house or condo, whatever it is, into this next purchase that you're going to be doing. And we just want to make sure that this is something that both of you still have your hearts in. And if it is, cool, then let's move forward. If it's not, then just let us know, because we don't want to be in a position where we're in escrow, we go through the entire process, just for you guys to, if something goes awry where it's not going to work out, I just want to make sure this is the right, that you communicate to me that this is the right decision that you guys are still wanting to do. And if it is, cool, let's move on. If it's not, completely understand. There's no hard feelings. I just want to make sure that that whatever we do is going to be right for you. Does that make sense?
That was
Awesome
really well
script.
put. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, that was awesome. Char's shared a couple big nuggets here. I just want to read them out loud for those that can't see the chat if they're on their phone. Asking questions like, on a scale from 1 to 10, where is this home from? Or what they listed was their priority. So going back to asking those questions, instead of getting their property criteria, ask what are your non-negotiables that your home must have. Not to list 1, 2 only, and Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, if we can find that for you at the right price, are you ready to put an offer? If not, what would make that into a yes? It's a good script from Char. So we'll save this chat box just so I don't read all this. And if people want it, you can email me or reach out to me, send me a message, and I'll send it to you. Thanks.
So can you type in there, Dylan is cool?
Yeah. Thank you. No, you're cool. This is a great script. So yeah, we'll let you keep going. That's all for questions right now. So take it away, Russ.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Let's see here. All right. Being the expert, create a best buy list. This is something you can do. This is a way to kind of create value. And in terms of creating value, you can make a list of your REOs, your HUDs, foreclosures, FSBOs. You know, if there's a hot property, one could be an income producing property, or what have you, is that when you have a list like this, you know, you can create like your best buyers list, and you can create and add value to someone. You can then create and have the opportunity to generate, you know, whether it's a mail out or, you know, whatever it is that you want to do. Mail out's kind of my generation, but you can create maybe a group or what have you that you're able to distribute and disseminate those particular informations. I will tell you this, is that once you generate or have activity and you've got buyers, let's say you're having a conversation and one of them says, yeah, you know, I want to buy foreclosures, or I want to buy a bank REO. Then you can just tell them, look, we typically will be able to put you up on a search, or we'll be able to have a special list. You can call it your best buyers list, or whatever you want to label it as. And we know when something does come on the market that matches your criteria, typically we'll flag you on it and give you a heads up. You know, how does that sound? And so you can start to build your criteria. I will tell you this, this is back in 2003. We actually were representing an investment network. And the guys were doing what's called armchair buying, where they weren't even viewing the property. They were just, we would literally, the instant that it hit the market, we would take pictures of it back with the, like it was like so old school back then. And we would literally then have to get everything scanned, uploaded, and sent over. And at that particular point in time, we had a list of like, buyers for 1 bedrooms, buyers for 2 bedrooms, and buyers for 3 bedrooms. And I would literally call down the list. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, here's a hot property just came on the market. It's a 1 bedroom, 1 bath. Total monthly nut is whatever, $1,200. At that time, it was such an inversion of where the interest rates had just come down that it was cheaper to buy than it was to rent. So anything that someone picked up and purchased in that dispensation of time, it was actually a positive, like $50 to maybe $200. So that was a part of the script. And so all it is figuring out how to create value for the buyers that you have, and that those that are interested in being able to move forward on a particular product. Cool. Do your homework. Stay in school. Be cool. All right. Sorry. Does the market agree? Time on market, list price, conditions, selling price. This is going to have to do with when you see a product that's on the market, and you'll be able to have the better words. You'll be in tune. Is a good way to put it. You'll be so in tune. Does anyone? I'm sure someone plays an instrument in here. I obviously don't, and if I sing, I'll break glass. But let's say that someone's a musician here, and if you're playing, let's say the ukulele, and all of a sudden, pink, you're like, whoa, that's kind of weird. Pink, yep, out of tune. Your ear is so sharp and is so in tune that you literally can adjust whatever that little thing is called, the white little spinny stuff. Yeah, I'm not a musician. And you're able to actually tune the ukulele to the right pitch or note or tone or whatever the name of it is, to the point that we should be that in tune with our market. So then my question is, are we pulling hot sheets every day? And are you looking to see what's new on the market? Are we looking to see what's gone into escrow? What's closing on the market? What are the withdrawals? What are the temporary withdrawals that are on the market? And are we looking, and do we know that? And as we continue to look at it on a consistent basis, you're going to start to develop an in-tuneness with the market. And a lot of agents actually, back in the summertime of last year, were already starting to get a sense or a feel that we were starting to break into our shifted market. Numerically, it was July of 2019 is when the market shifted officially on numbers wise into a balanced market. Now, because of the interest rates coming down, it created a little bit of an extra demand to where the months of inventory retracted a little bit. And it's still a little bit below that, but we officially shifted in July of 2019. Still doesn't mean that there aren't great deals out there, and the interest rates are absolutely amazing. So you'll be able to have a sense of that. So when a property comes in the market, you can say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you know, this one, it just came on the market. I know that the price that it came on, it's going to sell quick. The condition matches in terms of the interior, so it should probably be priced at X. And you want to be automatically in tune with that. And if you're not, at the very least, before you go out on showings, run your comps and do a little bit of homework before you sit down with your buyers, so that you know that if something comes up, you know, it's either a good opportunity or it's not. All right.
We have a quick question, Russ. Shirley asks, how do you help buyers who are having difficulty in deciding between two homes that they really love?
I ask for forgiveness, never permission. I'm just going to throw that out there. So the response that you're going to get may not be what the broker wants to hear. I'll do the edited version. You may want to do a list of pros and cons. Okay, so let's say they're dead even between those two. Then I would look at market condition, and I'll say, okay, of activity, like does one have offers over the other? I'd look at the price. Is the price right? Do you think they'll be able to give us credits? Are there going to be repairs that need to be done? And we start to look and formulate to see, okay, what's essentially, one's vacant versus one has a tenant in it. There's going to be some type of indication that will probably give you the feeling of that the probability is going to be higher if they move forward with one property or the other. So they can still like them the same, yet if they like this one and there's 15 offers on it, and they like this one and there's no offers on it, which one should they go for and move forward with? Maybe the one that doesn't have any offers on it, because the probability. So here's a statement. As a buyer's agent, our responsibility is to, number one, obtain a property for our buyers. And then number two, at the best price possible. So in accomplishing number one, they're separate now, they're not the same. In accomplishing and getting the best price possible, in accomplishing getting the house for your buyers, it could be below asking, it could be at asking, it could be above asking. The first half of that equation is we're there to get the property for our buyers. That's what they want, right? So you don't want to confuse those and have the best price possible, to get a property for your client. We're getting it first, and it may be higher. Best price may be higher than list.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's great. And Shar shared a book, and Lisa also shared some content in the chat for more in-depth research into those things. So thanks, Russ.
Perfect. Thank you. This one hits home for me. Find it for them. Where are we at? Oh, Lord Jesus. We're probably not going to get through all the material, and I apologize, guys. But I hope we've been providing, good value for you. So find it for them. When it comes to that, we absolutely need to understand what a buyer's urgency is. And this actually this is part of the DRAW, the dream state, or the desires of what they're looking for. That gets them into the limbic side of their brain, which is the emotional side. And then we go through the RAW, ready, able, willing. That last one, willing, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, when it comes to your desire to purchase, what's producing that desire? It could be relocation, it could be disaster, it could be life changes, second home, all of those that are listed there. So the reality is the reason why we ask that question is because at some point or other, you probably are going to have to come back to that motivation. Let's say that, I don't know, we're going to be, we're buying a house and it's for let's just say life changes, whatever it may be. It could be, unfortunately, it could be divorce. It could be, someone's moving here and retiring. I mean, whatever it is, and they're looking and they're not. Let's take the first. Gabby brought up divorce, so let's just it's her clients. Let's say they're taking out, and well, no, they would be buying, but they're divorced. Let's say this is past, that they've already been transitioned into that phase of their life, and you're going through, and their wants and needs are a lot more than what their budget is. And the reason why we find that motive out is you say, look, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, we've just come through a transition in our life, and we're at the point where, where we want to be able to get into the market. And, previous to this, our expectations and what we wanted to do and live in, our lifestyle was a little bit higher. And now it's time to be a little bit more conservative. And that's going to allow you to lay the good foundation for yourself. It's going to allow you to then be able to continue to grow, whether it's your savings and what have you. And this house that we're looking at right now, it's not your forever house. It simply is just that stepping stone to allow us to put seed into the ground so that time can take its course. We can have principal pay down, we can have potential appreciation, and then at the end, we'll have some type of equity that we'll be able to sell and then transition into that single family that you're looking for. So you definitely want to find out what their motivation is and what their level of urgency, their timing is. It goes through, builds equity, tax break. This is the chart that we drew up here. We didn't put appreciation on this one, even though it's listed there. Is that, you can break it apart. And you can actually calculate out, what's their principal pay down per month. If you don't have a mortgage calculator on your phone, I would absolutely get one. Sure, we can share the one. I can't get it now because I can't do a screenshot, but it's like a little percentage and it has like a house and a thing on there. So we'll definitely be able to get that from you. But I would get a mortgage calculator so that you can hit amortization and that it splits apart the principal pay down versus the interest that you're, because once it does that and you have the interest, then you can essentially find out what that is per month, and you can actually equate out what those two values are, okay? Because that will help understand my heart. We want to get them to feel comfortable emotionally and then provide enough information logically for them to move forward. Okay, so it's complementing. Show what they'll buy. Yeah, there's no need to go in on this one. If you're now, I will tell you this. In some cases, we've had buyers that have said, I only want this product at this price in this area. And if the net is so small that there's just not enough inventory, what's the next opportunity there? We've got to change the perception. So maybe instead of it being in this neighborhood, we say that we're going to, you know what? We'll still keep the criteria when it comes to your sales price. We'll still keep the criteria when it comes to the turnkey condition that you're wanting. What we may need to do though is we're going to start general and we're going to get specific, because we want to make sure that that KNOW, what you're saying no, NO to. So you want to know what you're saying no to, instead of setting such a tight restrictions on everything that there's very little opportunity for product to be available, number one, and for you to truly be happy with what it is that you're going to be moving forward with. What questions are most effective for determining buyers' true needs and wants? What can you define houses for your customers go buy? This comes with open-ended questions. Here's a technique, and you can role play back and forth. If there is a statement that someone makes, like, I want my house to be cool, and you're like, well, cool can mean anything. What does that even mean? If there's a word that you want to go in depth, it's called we call it like the onion question, right? Where it peels another layer off of the onion. And the script on now is, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, when you say blank, what does that mean? So when you say open floor plan, what does that mean? Or could you tell me a little bit more about when you say open floor plan, could you tell me a little bit more about that? And it's a layering question. You're getting down deeper. Don't just, oh yeah, I want a 3-car garage. Perfect. And move on. What about the 3-car garage is important to you? Well, you know, I like to work on cars. Ooh, now we're getting somewhere. Okay, when you say work on cars, can you tell me a little bit about that? Well, you know, when I was younger, my dad and I used to work on cars, and so it just reminds me of that. I have that memory. Now you've hit the emotion. We want to, besides financing, because financing is, in most cases, shouldn't be emotional, it's numbers. However, in the other areas, we want to drill down and keep asking the open-ended questions until you hear the emotion. Listen for their motive. Listen to the emotion behind what they're saying. All he said, he wanted a 3-car garage. And yet by just asking 2 questions, we were able to get to layer down, get deeper to the heart and core of the issue, and find out that it brings up and stirs a memory that he had building cars with his dad. Okay, so don't be afraid to have those open-ended questions with people to truly discover what it is that's important to them. And by all means, please don't assume that you know what that is. Does anyone know how to spell assume? Because that's what it does. It's an ASS out of you and me. I'll just leave that one out there. I don't know if I should have said that. But that's what assuming does. So we never want to assume, guys. All right, facilitate decision-making, features versus benefits. This goes back to the emotional state here. You know, they could be saying, hey, you know, we want to be able to have, you know, a fireplace. What about the fireplace is important to you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer? Well, I remember, you know, drinking hot cocoa with my grandma, you know, up in the hills of wherever it is you're drinking cocoa at. Okay, so it makes you feel like that. She said the word cozy, right? Or it reminds me of when I drank cocoa with grandma. Perfect. So when you drank cocoa with grandma, how did that make you feel? Oh, it was so like comforting or whatever it is, right? Ask those levels of questions. Get down to the actual emotional part or state of an individual. Now in the facilitating for the calculations, just as much as we calculate the positive, you can also calculate the negative. And we went through that. Oh, it was actually on the other one. I erased it all. Oh, here. When we were going through and we were talking about buying now versus later, not only are you paying $50 less per month, right? 900, 2.75% was $36.74 versus 805 at $37.28. Not only are you paying roughly $50 less per month when you buy here versus later on, you also can calculate and say, okay, you've also spent, you know, this is where Lisa Teichner's question of paying rent, you know, they're currently paying $3,000 per month, times 12 is 36, you know, times that 4-year time period, you're looking at what, $134,000. Is their cost just to wait. So you can, in going back, you can absolutely, you know, calculate, you know, the potential lack of principal pay down. If you be very careful and always disqualify your non-qualifying statement, being that, hey, I'm not a tax consultant. This is just an estimate. It's just simply for a concept purposes, whatever it may be, if you are actually calculating numbers, okay? But you can calculate, you know, the potential tax benefits. And then let's see, need for view homes, selection of homes buyers limited. These are just basically reasons if you're wanting to, if a buyer is just sitting on the fence, you could use those. The the numbers I'll run, but we normally just already, so here's what we're going to do. How does that sound? So here's what we're going to do, ... How does that sound? And we just continue moving our buyers forward. If there's a hard pass, like, no, I don't want to buy anything. Oh man, we really missed the mark. Can you help me understand, what about today's product didn't you like? And find out what it is that they didn't like about it. And you'll probably find that in most cases, we haven't asked enough questions to, again, going back to that first quote, asking the open-ended questions to be able to truly hear what the buyers already have, the answers that are already on their hearts. We have to ask more open-ended questions. And those techniques that we went through, when you say blank, could you tell me a little bit more about that? How did that make you feel? You can continue, when you say blank, can you tell me a little bit more? Or you can continue going through and digging and digging and digging until you hear the emotion. The removing fears portion, we went through those in terms of going through and numerically showing potentially what a buy now versus a buy in the future would look like. In terms of removing their fears, we always run CMA. I don't know even why that should always be on there. That shouldn't even be something that came up. But always run your CMA and always, just let them know in terms of the appraisal. If the appraisal does come in low, we're not obligated to have to move forward. Now, if we do cancel at that time, we've already done our home inspection, we've already done the appraisal. So those are, that's what our exposure is, which is basically what, $1,100 roughly in our marketplace. So you can go through that and just know that you're not obligated to move forward and buy. These are basic concessions, and I know we're kind of running out of time, so I'm just gonna breeze through these for a little bit. These are, if you are asking for concessions, these are some of the things that you can go through and ask for, whether it's improvement, for your cost improvements, for carpet, for painting. You can do any kind of early move out, you could do a credit for early, I would just term it closing costs. Seller to credit buyer X amount of dollars for closing costs. Whatever it is that you want to spend it on, I wouldn't necessarily put it in there, because on lenders' guidelines, there's certain wording, and you can check with your respective brokers as well as the lenders and see what's acceptable. The last thing you want to say is, with a VA, for example, yeah, we're going to get $20,000 to be able to repair the whatever damage in whatever part of the house. Well, that's going to notify the appraiser, because they're going to see that on the contract, be like, okay, I'm going to scrutinize this. And all of a sudden now the values come down all the way down to here. Number one, you want to make sure that the buyer always has full disclosure and also has the ability to do their home inspection and know what the condition of the property is first. If you want to put lipstick on the pig afterwards, you talk to your broker on that. Personally, we had a property that I knew the painting was it wasn't going to fly in some of the rooms. It looked horrible. There was, the windows, it needed lipstick. So we went through the entire home inspection, have a clear understanding of all of the issues. And then we went back and we painted it a little bit, touched up, and just made it look pretty. The appraisal actually ended up coming in $10,000 higher than what we were in escrow at. So was there a risk if it didn't go through and yet we did a little bit of touch up? Yes, there absolutely was. Yet the buyer was willing to do it. And in this specific sense, the seller was also willing to allow us to do that. So that's, maybe something that you can think about. These are on their closings. These are some of the examples that we use. I just stick to my one closing line, and I've put in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of properties, and that's just, so here's what we're going to do. How does that sound? And so here's what we're going to do is leading. It's kind of like leading the witness in a court setting. It also is providing them the direction that you want them to go without forcing them. And you have the, so how does it sound in there? Because you're keeping them in the limbic state, and the limbic state itself you're keeping in that limbic state that because it's a sensory word, it's sound, it's hearing, right? All your senses. Limbic is the emotional side of the brain in the middle. So I typically don't say, what do you think? That throws them to logic. How does it look? Look is a sensory word. However, it's in most people's definition of that sensory word, it has to do with logic. So I don't even say, how does it look? It's either how does it sound? How do you feel? Those are the only two things, normally the two closings that I have. You can't say, how does it taste? Because that would just be weird. All right. So on the bottom line, as far as us being the expert, we absolutely do need to be the expert on your local economy. So hands down, I would go back and I would study your graphs. If you guys have these annual resale data graphs, I would go back and kind of just study and look through, and you'll start to see some different patterns emerging, and you'll be able to, absolutely be able to spit out, some knowledge in terms of the current market conditions. And you can help shape your buyers' expectations. And that's through that knowledge, you're able to educate the buyers, and you're able to reduce their fears, and then you can create, your best buy list if that's something that you want to do. I kind of want to open it up to questions. I know we got just a little bit more time, and if you have to log off, we wanted to say thank you for being with us. But if one or two people could share their ahas, just go ahead and Dylan, are you still there?
Yep, I'm right here, and I have a question for you right here. So
you're like
can you hear me?
Magic. Okay, yeah, we got.
So great. So Daniel wants to know. First of all, that was awesome. Also, just thank you so much for sharing this everything that you did today. And it was. Hope everyone found it just amazing. I have pages and pages of notes. So thanks so much. Daniel wants to ask. He wants some more information on buyback guarantees. What about an option period? How do you, Daniel, can you expand more on those questions?
We've done a buyback once, and I'm going to just assume that if a buyer gets into a house they don't like, then we're going to buy it back. You need to be very clear on what you mean and communicate that as you go forward. I would assume that if the replacement buy is a different house on the selling side, that there's not going to be any commissions that are being sold. No, I'm not gonna. You can still hear me, right, Dylan?
Yep.
Okay, I'm not touching anything. Are you there?
Yep, you're good.
I got the two cameras. That's why it's kind of funky. So I totally spaced on the question. Start again.
You're talking about your buyback guarantee.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So
yeah.
You want to make sure that you calculate at every phase. If you're going to resell the house, what does that look like? If you're going to help them on the buy side, are there any costs associated with that? Because you got 1% on the buy, the new buy, and you also have the cost to sell. So you got to be very, very careful that you run all your numbers, exactly what you're getting into. In fact, I would encourage you to have dialogue with your broker, because they may see something, in fact, they probably will, that you have not caught on or added rather into your equation that you want to make sure you go through it start to finish. And you get that model. So let's say that in order for us to be able to buy, like you guarantee buy, you don't like it, we'll sell it, then we'll buy this other one. You want to make sure that you've got those numbers dialed in, because guess what? It's going to cost you a heck of a lot of money if you give your word on something and it's not necessarily, you didn't think of all of the variables. So definitely call and talk to your broker, have that conversation with them, put together a spreadsheet and just brainstorm on all the potential options that may exist. And then just have that as your working master model. And then, which brings a good point, Gary Keller literally built their entire company off of one question. One question. And the question that he had, this is what he found out in college and also when he was reading Tony Robbins material. You can see this in the Red Book, MREA, in the beginning chapters. He says that he asked one question: what's the model? So you need to find the model out. If you are going to do that guarantee buy model, is it Daniel? Then I would absolutely find the model.
That's awesome. Thank you. We have a question from Patricia. Are you, or what are your thoughts, or are you on, or what are your thoughts on the Airbnb or VRBO? We have thousands, and some agents across country are talking about many of these coming on the market. Different islands here are in different phases with Bill 108. Do you believe this will affect the market on this next year? Big Island has over 89,000 and many didn't get the certificate.
Yeah, hands down. If you got buyers, I certainly would not be counseling them that they can do that, number one. You always want to protect yourself, protect your brokerage. Second thing is that I've always been from the approach of being conservative. And if the best case scenario is going to be your short-term rental, what does the worst case scenario look like? And that worst case scenario is what the client should be basing their financial decisions off of, not the best case. Because then you get off into selling, like, you know, how they sell securities and get into all kind of weird junk where you're like, oh, you promised me that this house could make $20,000 a month in a short-term rental. No, let's not go down that path. The option potentially may be there, and if they want to make that decision, that's up to them. Or we certainly shouldn't be selling. I personally would not sell to that. That will get you in a lot of trouble. Here's the truth, Patricia. People smile when the market is good. Everyone's happy. It's joy. Everyone's loving everybody. The instant that this market turns, and as it continues to turn, that's when true personalities come out. That's when the lawsuits start taking place. So the actions that we do now, we want to be very, very clear that we've thought through everything and that we've planned out the worst case scenarios, so you protect yourself. And here's a tip. You put in writing what you want to exist. So if you want to protect yourself, make sure you're putting, per our conversation, they asked about short-term rentals, but we're not discussing whatever it is. You want to build, make sure that you build that. Put it what you want. You only put in writing what you want to exist.
That's awesome. Marcus had a couple ahas. He just said, when you say this, what does that mean? So I think just digging deeper in those open-ended questions was a big aha for everyone.
When you say blank, what does that mean? Awesome.
Yeah, when you say blank, what does that mean? Yeah, it was just, so, and then how does that sound? He loves that. So great scripting pieces, great questions. I mean, that's what they say, right? We don't have to have the best answers. We have to ask the best questions. And that's what makes,
you're 100% done, because every answer is going to be different.
Yeah.
But it is based on experiences, based on their past. It's based on the party that's happening outside.
Yeah, you guys are having a rocking time over there.
It's always based upon, where they've been in life, All right. Any other questions or ahas?
I have a question. I just think this is important, but I like to hear from all the presenters is what, during this time, why are you in the business? Just as take a step back and bring it back. What's your big why right now? And, what's kept you in the business this long?
That's a good question. I love serving people. I always have. That's just a passion that I have. I believe that shows up in everything that I do. And with myself, it's getting a little emotional. It's an opportunity to really help people with their largest decision. And it's a serious thing opportunity that we have. And if we're not taking it at that level and you're in it for the money, this is not the industry for you. We have the opportunity to create financial wealth that is going to eventually reach that next generation, and next generation. So there's a definite ripple effect that can take place, good and bad. And so if you're in it for the wrong reasons, I'd get out now, because you'll make your little bit of money and that's it. If you're in it for the right reasons, if you have the high levels of character and integrity, if you're there to truly serve people, now you're in a position where you have third largest decision, God, family, and then business. This is the third largest decision anyone's ever going to make. So we absolutely love just serving people. That's just a passion of mine.
Thank you so much. No, thanks for sharing that. That's huge. I think, wouldn't you agree that has shifted your success in this business?
You put the people first, the money will follow.
It's awesome. So it's 3:06. There's a lot more questions. If you guys have other follow-up questions, you can reach out to myself and Lisa, and we can reach out to Russ and get other, if you need any other materials, we'd love to help.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you
very
guys
much.
for being here.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Aloha.
We appreciate all your time and for staying with us. I know we were a little bit over, but thank you.
It's awesome.
Thank
All right,
you.
aloha, everybody.